does knowledge involve something more? Okay. So let's think about this with a case. So suppose that John has never made a mistake. Today, he plans to buy some low-fat milk at the store. By mistake, he incorrectly tells his friend Sam that he intends to buy whole milk. Later, when John goes to the store, still planning to buy low-fat milk, he accidentally picks up a container of whole milk. Not realizing his mistake, he pays for the milk and leaves the store. Does Sam know what kind of milk John bought at the store? Right? So this gets at the heart of these Gettier cases that we talked about. So hopefully, just to refresh, in epistemology, we really want to figure out what are the conditions for knowledge. Because in cases like this, again, it seems this should remind you of the clock example. There really seem to be a lot of issues with what kind of conditions need to be there for someone to claim to have knowledge, right? And that's part of the challenge. That's why epistemology is such can often be a dense and complicated affair, because obviously reasonable people are going to disagree on what counts for knowledge. Okay. So we could say if Sam were asked whether he knows this, he would say that he knows that John bought whole milk, because Sam is indeed justified. It also is true, though by accident, that John bought whole milk. So Sam has a justified true belief, right? So again, Gettier problem. So these kinds of discussions feed into quite nicely, well, what is truth? Because it seems like when we talk about knowledge, it's hard not to talk about truth and things like facts. So what's the relationship between knowledge and truth? I mean, that's a big set of questions, I know, and we're not even beginning to scratch the surface, but hopefully right away, it should be clear that our notions of knowledge are inexorably tied up with notions of truth, right? In different situations in real life, we seem to believe truth means different things and perhaps can be established in different ways. So truth could be what gets us what we want, what fits with our other beliefs and meanings, and what corresponds with what is out there in the real world. So obviously, if you've noticed, especially in online conversations, what counts for truth has dramatically, I think it's safe to say, changed based on a number of factors, whether it's confirmation bias, some psychological factors. There's so much more we could say here, but notions of truth have certainly changed, and one might argue changed quite dramatically in the last 20 or so years with the rise of the internet, right? So it depends on who you ask, and we're going to look at a couple different answers to the question, what is truth? And most of the notions of truth that we'll get are going to fall into or match up with 1, 2, or 3, and they're going to give us different answers. So maybe it would be helpful to pause here and think to yourself, well, what is truth? What do you think truth is? Does 1 sound promising? Does 2 sound promising? Or 3 sound promising? Or if none of those 3, what do you think truth is? It's a age-old question, and hopefully you've thought about it before, but we'll get into the details. Okay, so as I mentioned, there have been 3 primary theories of truth that line up with the 3 points that we just had on the previous slide that are covered in this article. There's others, but we'll focus on 3 of them. The pragmatic theory of truth. So the pragmatic theory says that our beliefs are true when they work. That is, when they get us what we want. So that might sound a little oversimplified, but a lot of people seem to have the idea that, well, what's true is what works, right? So if it works, if it gives us something that gets us results, that's all we mean by true. So that's one approach that we'll talk about. Another approach is called coherence theory. And the coherence theory says that a belief is true when it fits with our other beliefs and meanings. In other words, when a belief coheres with the other pieces of knowledge that we have. And the third one, which I think it's safe to say has been the most widely shared and intuitive view of truth, is what's called the correspondence theory. So the correspondence theory of truth says that a belief is true when it corresponds with what is out there in the real world, right?